The Questions Log, Week 18, Celebration Day. Renee and I are to receive medals for our bravery and actions during the wedding of Black Adam and Isis. Only it wasn't my actions that prevented tragedy. It was hers, and she doesn't see it like that. Right now, Renee's coping with it her own way. Which will aggravate Black Adam more? Her absence or my wrinkled suit? This is 52 Pickup. Welcome back to 52 Pickup, a podcast about the greatest comic you've never heard of. I'm professional comic book expert Alex Jaffe.
And I'm Gita.
Hey, Gita.
That's me. I was waiting for you to introduce me, and then you just didn't, so I just decided to introduce myself.
I wouldn't want to sell you short, you know? I feel like any intro I could build up for you would not do you justice. So why not let the writer speak for themselves?
You know what? Fair enough. But all I have to say about myself is that I'm Gita, and that's who I am.
That's all you need to know at this point. We're on episode 18. You know everything that comes with Gita, and you should be well into it by now, because why wouldn't you be?
I would hope so.
Yeah, certainly. But we're here to talk about a comic book we're both insane about, and we brought somebody with us, one of the 4 people in the Question fandom that I can freak out about this weird faceless dude every day. Please welcome to the show our special guest, my friend, and hopefully soon to be yours, the moderator of the best and only question meme source on the internet, Questionposting. Here's David. David from Questionposting. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here, and I love the freak out about our favorite faceless freak. It's great.
There's not a lot of people who get it.
Well, he's just so chaotic. Like there's a controlled chaos to his comics that like the creators get to do their own thing, and the character himself is just so layered, and you can just do so much with him, and you can just kick his ass every issue, and it's great.
Yeah, that's really what I love about The Question. What I love about The Question is the opposite thing that Batman fans love about Batman, that he's absolutely the best at everything and always finds a way to win. The Question he's a loser, but he keeps on doing it.
Oh yeah.
What else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
There's a real human element, something that might just be something that Batman gets through no problem, because he has a certain disguise or a certain gadget or whatnot. The Question has to spend that issue really contemplating, or he'll hurt his arm, and that will factor in the next 3 issues or something.
Right. Yeah, it's always about growing from failure, which is kind of the theme of his entire arc through this comic, where he bestows that lesson onto Renee Montoya, where he picks this woman up at her absolute lowest point and shows her this isn't an ending. This is something you can learn from. That's Denny O'Neil's whole deal, really, and something that he really communicated in his Batman and Green Arrow runs, and really comes through the clearest, I think, in the work he does on The Question.
Yeah, The Question, and growing up, I read the first Dennis O'Neil comics really cracked open were his Iron Man issues, and even those really explored Tony Stark as an absolute failure, and him
Demon in a Bottle.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was actually Demon in a Bottle Part 2, is because that was where Obadiah Stane was first introduced, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, no, I love Dennis O'Neil stuff, and I think Greg Rucka did a really good job, utilizing The Question to push on the legacy, kind of teasing it in Cry for Blood, but really following through in 52, which I think was really well.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time that Cry for Blood is kind of the missing chapter in The Question story that a lot of people overlook because his name's not in the title, because Batman is in 3 panels, so they decided to put him there instead. Oh,
yeah,
man.
They always use the Batman iconography. Helltown is a novel entirely about The Question, but who's on the spine? Batman.
Yeah, it's called DC Universe Helltown because no one would buy a book called The Question Helltown.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, that's our boy.
He's featured in this issue.
Yeah, he is featured in this issue. He gets a little bit of work to do, and I'm excited to get into it.
He's in my favorite scene.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there. We got to go through it scene by scene. We're not even at the cover yet. First, we got to talk talent. You ready for that?
I'm ready for talking talent. I'm
All
always
right.
ready.
This issue, we got Eddie Barrows on pencils and Rob Stull on inks. Not new faces to 52. This team previously gave us the Natasha Irons lab experiment fetish scene where that nozzle was stuck down her throat in issue 8. And the first transformation of Isis in issue 12. So we know what to expect from this guy.
A lot of pouty faces.
Yes, a lot of pouty faces. He loves to draw sad boys and sad girls. And he's going to get plenty of opportunity here.
That's most of what this issue is, actually. Sad boys and sad girls.
Yeah, this is the mopey issue. You need a few of those.
Yeah.
Especially post-80s. You need an issue now and again that's just somebody curled up in a corner crying a little to themselves about their trauma.
Oh, yeah,
we got to linger on it for it to matter. On the cover, we've got a little bit of this Scooby-Doo tableau, a bearded Ralph Dibny, a detective chimp, and a character who is identified in the issue as Terry 13, who appears nowhere else in the history of comics. It's probably meant to be Tracy 13, but I'm waiting on confirmation on whether that was a slip up or if this was some new introduced character who happens to look exactly like her, because comic nerds won't believe the clear evidence that this one character was supposed to be another character unless they get an official statement on it. But for all intents and purposes, this is Terrence 13's daughter. Just kind of poking over Bobo's shoulder here, wearing an In Grad We Trust t-shirt and just this big helmet of fate, the coolest looking helmet in all of DC Comics, looms in the top right corner.
You're right about that helmet. It's so good.
Yeah.
The helmet is arguably more famous than the character, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Everybody knows who Dr. Fate is because of the helmet, but then you ask them anything about the character and they're like, you know, like, I don't know.
Which is one of the many things that baffles me about the Black Adam movie. Like, if you have Dr. Fate in your movie and 80% of his character, 90% of his character is the helmet, why do you change the helmet?
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense at all. It simply doesn't.
It's a weird design, too.
Yeah. Like, they took out the eyes and it's got this asymmetrical thing going on.
No, the scariest thing about the helmet is that it's got pitch black eyes and it's completely symmetrical. Come on.
Just this absolute featureless bucket that just makes you think, what's going on behind that helmet? And it's not for mortals to know. Yep. And that's a great hook to the supernatural mystery we're about to get. This issue really ties into the after effects of Day of Vengeance, which was one of the 4 tie-ins to Crisis on Infinite Earths, about how magic is getting all screwy and how a 10th age of magic is starting. Yeah,
you can see them just barely, like, accomplishing the brief in this issue, where they owe some work to DC editorial in that this comic is supposed to explain stuff that has happened, and they're explaining it, but, like, only kind of a little bit and not that much.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, Sorry, that makes a lot of sense now because, like, I was reading up to this point through it, so I'm like caught up on the story proper and everything. And like in this issue, it's like suddenly, okay, wait, why are we suddenly seeing Shadowpact? Who are these magic people? Why is Detective Pip there? Like why are they so involved in this story? But that explains a lot now.
Yeah, this is like part of the original concept for the comic, and probably the only reason why it exists in any form is that they were doing this 1 year later thing, and they were supposed to explain all the things that happened in that year, 52 weeks in a year. And then they just didn't do that.
What's hilarious about how this issue tackles that is even this attempt to somehow tie in the Shadowpact story turns out to be a complete fuck up, which we will get into.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Which the bottom of this cover alludes to, the when is the Shadowpact, which is kind of a teaser that, like, Stephen Wacker, editor, even as he was putting out this issue, knew there was a problem here, but it was too late to change anything. But we'll get into it when Shadowpact actually shows up. We open with the House of Mystery on day 1 of week 18. We see a mailbox for Kane, the caretaker of the House of Mystery back in the 1970s, is overstuffed, which turned out to be, I think, was meant to be just like a silly Easter egg for House of Mystery fans. But because literally just 2 issues ago, we had that suicide bomber who was talking about Kane, this scene misled a lot of people at the time thinking, oh, Kane must be Kane from the House of Mystery.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And we see these framed pictures in the House of Mystery as the headquarters of this crime-solving team we've literally never heard of before now, called the Croatoan Society. This is their only issue. They were invented for this, and they never show up again. I actually spoke to Mark about this issue, and he told me that, the Croatoan Society is one of those things they developed for the comics that they never really got the opportunity to get back to. But 52 is a very busy series, but basically the reason this exists is so that there's a reason for Elongated Man to talk to Detective Chimp. Because one thing we've realized through this whole series is Mark Waid will always capitalize on any time two characters have ever interacted with each other. And there simply was just no issue where Elongated Man ever talked to Detective Chimp. So he had to invent this team where somehow they had this shared history.
There is one other connection between at least the word Croatoan and another comic book, which is in Seven Soldiers of Victory, Clarion the Witch Boy, he comes from the lost colony of Roanoke. And in real life, Roanoke, the only evidence of Roanoke after everyone there died was someone carved the name of a nearby colony, Croatoan, onto a tree. So the Croatoan Society is probably a reference to that. But knowing that Morrison also worked on this, I wonder if that's just a word that they threw around because they were already interested in that unsolved mystery, essentially. I mean, the mystery is solved. I feel like all historians that I know of that have talked about this, we're all like, people consider it a mystery, but it's pretty likely that just everyone at that colony died, and they just died at the new colony also.
Yeah.
It's not much of a mystery.
The newspaper clippings also refer to Stonehenge and Easter Island, just solving those mysteries, and Caspar Hauser. I had to look up the name Caspar Hauser. Did you know who Caspar Hauser was?
No.
Caspar Hauser was this weird little boy who showed up in the 19th century who claimed to have been raised in absolute darkness, in complete isolation, and just wandered out one day. And just the entire world was kind of captivated by the mystery of where the hell this boy came from. Because back in the 19th century, a news story could be, what's the deal with this weird boy?
Interesting.
Yeah. So the rest of the team, including Elongated Man and Detective Chimp, as we see in this frame picture, is the aforementioned Terry / Tracy 13. And at the bottom, we have Tim Trench, who was a private eye and Wonder Woman's love interest in the 1970s, back in Denny O'Neil's infamous, disastrous Let's Take Away All of Wonder Woman's Powers run that nobody really likes. And this original character named Edogawa Sangoku, who shows up in this issue and nowhere else. His name is a reference to the Japanese mystery novelist Edogawa Orampo, who basically founded Japanese mystery fiction as we know it today. I asked Mark about this guy. He said, we just needed some more non-white guys in this scene, so I invented one. It's not my fault. Nobody used him again. Tim Trench was a last-minute substitute. He wanted to use Misto the Magician, who was this old Detective Comics backup story character, except his last name is Carter, and there are already enough Carters in this comic. So it's like,
with the time machine thing, it would that would confuse everything.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Especially this specific issue.
Yeah.
You can't have another Carter in this one.
Yeah, they introduced the other Carter in a few scenes, yeah.
That absolutely couldn't fly, so I totally understand pulling this guy, even if it's from a dude representing a lame era of Wonder Woman nobody liked. And anyway, we're going to kill him off in the next page.
I'm sorry. The whole stuff with the House of Mystery is so funny to me. It's just a big gag. All of it is hilarious. It's because they have to have... I can't look at this page without laughing because there is like a pullout of Detective Chimp saying, is anybody else's nose twitching? And just the fact that there's a chimp that's a detective is very funny to me. I can't get over it.
Yeah.
But in front of that little pullout, behind the little pullout is Tracy 13 and Detective Chimp looking down at a pool of water where one assumes the body of this now dead man where it was, and the helmet of Dr. Fate.
Right. When Tracy / Terry and Edogawa walked into this locked office, they found what looked to be the body of Tim Trench wearing this helmet of fate. And the minute Tracy touches him, he melts into a puddle of water. And that's when we get our title drop, Dismantled. I think it was Grant Morrison who said that Detective Chimp represents the heart of what DC is, to the point that his initials are literally DC. That like
I don't think they're wrong. They're not wrong about this. It's just, he shows up, Detective just shows up, and I'm like, there's a fucking chimp who's a detective.
Right.
That's just great.
Yeah, you can really throw him in anything, honestly.
Absolutely. He is a kind of character that like a young Jewish boy in the 1940s would think of. And that's to me what DC is.
My absolute favorite scene in the Injustice comics, which are usually this very grim affair where people are dying all the time, was a scene in year 3 of the book. Which was a heavily John Constantine oriented one. And John and Chaz, his driver, are in the front of his cab, and sitting in the back, just glowering, is Batman sitting next to Detective Chimp. And John leans over to Chaz and he's like, "Psst, hey, look in the back right now." And they both look and see it. They start laughing their asses off.
That's so funny. That's so great.
Yeah.
That's why you want to have a shared universe, right? It's for moments like this.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
I think what differentiates DC's shared universe from Marvel's shared universe is the fact that we have all of these extremely fragmented styles of characters that really don't work in each other's books. So once on the occasions that they do cross over, you're just slapped in the face by the contrast of it. Whereas all of Marvel's characters tend to exist more or less on the same wavelength.
Yes, and partially because it was like a universe that was self-consciously created to contrast to DC's shared universe, partially because a lot of the same collaborators created the pillars of the Marvel universe that holds it all up, and also just because it's shorter. It's like shorter in time. You don't have people being like, well, there's a fucking chimp who is a detective. I don't fucking know. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I kind of noticed that too. Like, and with DC, like the farther it goes all along in time, you know, seeing like Batman or whoever team up with various characters that are just introduced into the DC universe, or maybe even temporarily there, it makes a little bit more sense and it has a bit more of a punch than say with Marvel. I in my opinion, just like not even just because of the iconicness of certain ones, but because like the DC universe, like you said, like, you know, you have like, you know, Jack Cole characters interacting with like these 90s Rob Liefeld type.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's like an interesting contrast.
Different generations of young Jewish men making up a guy, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Gita, why do you think this issue is called Dismantled?
I mean, here you get to see a man be dismantled. A helmet is also a mantle.
A mantle, yeah.
Yes, that's
I
true.
think that's it.
But also, we're about to see Renee Montoya feels dismantled.
Yeah, she's coming apart.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of it's got a couple of different meanings, I would say. I think the most obvious one right here is the mantle on top of this man. It's freaking dismantled him. He's gone.
Yeah. He was liquefied by this helmet.
He was dismantled. I'm sorry, I'll leave. that was really not good.
All right. Cut halfway across the world to Shiruta Kondak, where a medal ceremony is going on to recognize Vic Sage and Renee Montoya's heroic subversion of what would have been a deadly terrorist attack at Black Adam's wedding.
I have one quick question before we move on. Shiruta has a city name for anywhere in Kondak been named before this moment?
Yeah, I think we've seen the name of Shiruta before.
Okay. So
but that's it.
Just one. Got it.
Breaking news. I just got an email from Mark Waid this second confirming that Terry 13 and Tracy 13 are in fact the same character. That's
Great.
canon.
No way.
You've heard it here first.
Wow. Breaking news.
That's amazing.
God. Okay. To me, one of the biggest mysteries of this comic is like, what's Kondak like? What's it like there? And I'm trying to glean every issue for any information about the climate, the territories, the names of places. Okay. So Shiruta, capital city. We know that for sure. Any other city name? Question mark. Just big question mark.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen too many of the citizens either, right? Like, only a little bit of them, like in the crowd and such.
Yeah, and they every issue to issue, I will also say the style of dress changes wildly. In some issues, they wear ceremonial tribal garb, and in some issues, they wear modern clothing, and in some issues, it's like a combination of both, which is probably the most realistic option, but it doesn't seem very cohesive. Issue over issue, it feels more clear that the writers did not really know what kind of place Kahndaq was, which is unfortunate.
Here's my description of Kahndaq. You know the East? Imagine the middle of it.
What?
No way!
That's Kahndaq, baby.
Kahndaq is when you see, like, in a television show, there's, like, some sand dunes and a camel chewing cud, and then a lady in the background goes,
You gotta get that sepia filter in. Sepia as hell.
Absolutely.
It's any drone shot from the movie Dune.
Yes. On the side note on like Kahndaq, like I'm just like I rereading this especially, like I like to think of like Black Adam is like a lot like Dr. Doom, except like way less sure of himself and just like way more mopey about it, but will still do all the things Dr. Doom does.
Yeah. You know, actually, yes.
Black Adam very much feels like Jeff Johns' attempt to make a Dr. Doom for DC out of this character who he plucked out of the Golden Age. And why not? Dr. Doom's a great character. Why not steal him?
Yeah, everybody loves Ancient Kings, you know?
Yeah.
We do love that shit. It's always fun.
Sure, throw a little bit of Namor in there and Bob's your uncle. So we got this medal ceremony, and Black Adam uses the Question's full name for the first time in a long time, Charles Victor Zsasz. A question I get a lot is, hey, if the Question's last name is Zsasz, is he related to Mr. Zsasz, the Batman villain? And what do you make of that, David?
Oh, well, it's so funny, like, because, like, you know, when I was reading the Dennis O'Neil question series, like, you know, I was tripped out by that too. And like, when I started posting on my meme page, a lot of people were like, well, yeah, aren't they related? They have like basically the same name. Like, no, you switch around the S and the Z. But beyond that, I read Victor Zsasz is like the serial killer's first appearance in Shadow of the Bat, like the very first issue. It was really fascinating to see, I kind of feel like Dennis O'Neil and Alan Grant maybe weren't just like, maybe they just never talked to each other about it. And they were like, oh, wait a minute.
I know a little bit about this, actually. Denny O'Neil and Alan Grant both named their respective characters because his last name wasn't Zsasz until the Denny O'Neil series. He was just Vic Sage before then. They both named their characters after a real person, psychiatrist Thomas Stephen Zsasz. Thomas Zsasz wrote the 1961 psychology book, The Myth of Mental Illness, which was this really revolutionary book at the time, suggesting that maybe neurodivergence isn't something that needs to be cured. Maybe these people aren't sick. And that was a hugely controversial idea at the time, and one that we're only just barely starting to come around to today.
Right.
Very much just barely. And that
exactly.
Some people do definitely believe that we need to be cured.
Yeah, there's still a lot more work that needs to be done, but Thomas Zsasz was ahead of the curve there.
It's so funny that we get a evil neurodivergent character and a good neurodivergent character out of that.
Inside you, there are two wolves.
That's exactly it, Gita, because you kind of feel like, based on the content of those stories, that Denny was on Thomas Zsasz's side, whereas Alan Grant was kind of making fun of him by naming the most evil psychopath he could imagine after him.
I can see that now, because like Zsasz started out very philosophical like and stuff too. So like,
I mean, we were just talking about how DC wanted their own Dr. Doom. Zsasz, when you read that first arc he shows up in, the last Arkham, he's very, very much we should have a Hannibal Lecter character.
That makes total sense.
For sure. Yeah, he's locked up the same way. He's in that like metal case or whatever.
Exactly.
What time period is that also? Do you remember?
1990.
Okay, so it would have been after Michael Mann's Hannibal Lecter movie also. Manhunter.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so
they'd be catching in on that.
Yeah. So there's already that character has started to take over like popular culture, and like a therapist, but he's evil is like becoming a very fun archetype for people to play around with.
Yeah, evil therapists are kind of a problem in DC Comics. It's much harder to find a good therapist than a supervillain one.
That explains a lot of things about the DC universe and the people that live there.
Well, your guys' therapist didn't try to create an army of giant monsters?
No, not usually.
I mean, mine's been dosing me with little bits of Fear Toxin every week, and I think it's really doing something good for me.
Wait and see where that one goes.
Yeah, Fear Toxin exposure therapy is right up there with ketamine therapy.
Yeah, there was one good therapist in Gotham City, and the Joker turned her into a suicide girl.
That's Listen, she had to pay off her student loans, okay?
Yeah. Around this time is when Black Adam's like, hey, wait a minute, where's Renee Montoya, the woman who actually did something while you stood there and made comments? Why isn't she here? And then we get maybe the funniest page in the entire series.
It is extremely funny. It's just, he just Kool-Aid mans through a wall and is like, why are you sleeping with someone right now? Because Renee Montoya is nude in a bed with another woman, as she is wont to do. I want to point out, though, in the page facing this one, that the question without a mask on is giving the biggest shit-eating grin when he gets his medal, like he knows he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
I love that expression.
That's great. I love it. And especially it's great because this is like the question's first, in this continuity, like the first real time he's like in the larger DC universe, right? Like, like aside from the Crisis, I guess. But like,
you're forgetting about LAW living assault weapons.
How could I forget? Oh my God.
God. The less said about that book, the better.
The creators agree. It's so great that like in like this context, like Vic Sage / Charles Richards as it really is nobody. So he's just like there and it's like, they don't even recognize him as the question. They're just like, oh yeah, you're just some guy.
He's not even there in his capacity as a superhero. That's a really good point.
We're here at an award ceremony for Detective Renee Montoya and some guy.
And friend, plus one.
Plus one.
Yes, God, so funny. So Renee's in bed with another woman, and then you also realize in the panel underneath it, she's got the wavy outlines to her dialogue box, so she's smashed right now.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. And, what follows is just like, it's just Dr. Doom trying to argue with a drunk person, essentially.
That's literally what it is. Oh, man.
God,
so
Renee's, she's going through it in this next page to default next to the 6-panel grid. And she's trying to put some clothes on, puts on some jeans, and like the ISIS just pushes the poor nude woman out of the room. And she's just like super drunk and like just keeps trying to like smack and grab at Black Adam here. Black Adam's so fucking angry about it and wants to kill her, and she's like, do it. Please kill me. I would love it if you would kill me now.
It's full on married Vegeta. Like, he would like nothing more than to reduce this person who disrespected him to a fine mist. But Isis is literally standing right in behind him. So there's nothing he can do.
Yeah, no, this is a Bulma and Vegeta scene for sure.
Absolutely.
And I really think the frowny faces of the artist, I'm already forgetting the individual's name.
Eddie Barrows,
Eddie Barrows, I think it actually really works in this scene, especially when Renee's like zooms in on her face and like, she's like, no, do it. I don't fucking care.
Yeah. There's a subtle change between the expression she's making in the first panel when he puts his hand around her throat and then the next panel. You see the first panel, she looks like surprised, like her eyebrows are lifted and the whites of her eyes are really visible. But in the next one, you can see like sadness and less fear. It's a pretty good work.
Like, I hate to make this comparison, but it's unignorable. The bit where she's telling Black Adam to straight up kill her while she's got tears running down her face, that's literally just Rorschach at the end of Watchmen talking to Dr. Manhattan.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting parallel.
Especially considering where the storyline is going.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. No, and then that would talk about Watchmen parallels. That'll happen several issues later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, there's the metatextual element that is always apparent, especially for non-comics readers that have learned like one or two comic book facts. Whenever the question shows up, they're always like, Rorschach. And it's like, those characters are so incredibly different in like every single way. Number one being that Vic Sage showers,
Yes.
They change showers and he's like sad, but he has not let sadness completely consume him. He has not he does not see the world in black and white. He does see the world in terms of shades of gray, and he exists in those grays. But it is always fun then as a writer, because then you get to invoke one of the greatest comic books ever written ever.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I cannot blame Dwayne McDuffie even a little bit for drawing on Rorschach for the Justice League Unlimited portrayal of the Question, because it's too fun not to play with. But like Greg Rucka does here, and what Denny O'Neil did in the latter half of his Question run, you play with Rorschach as a contrast to the Question of two different ways that Steve Ditko's Question could have gone. Jeff Lemire does some really interesting stuff with that in The Deaths of Vic Sage.
Oh yeah. That one was really good.
We get one of our best Vic Sage quotes out of context here when Isis scolds everyone in the room, saying her grief and your anger are both misplaced. And Vic simply says, Isis is right, which is something you can just share with people out of context.
I do love that. We could just take this panel out of context and post it right now, you know?
Now I'm thinking back to the Mysterious Suspense story. I'm just going to edit it in like, yeah, Mr. Sage, you think Isis is right.
I love that we're giving you real-time ideas for memes on this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
I better see a bunch of them after this. Then Renee gives us her Reginald Val Johnson. She shot a kid.
God.
Oh, yeah. I love that, Vic also here is, doing, a sort of, Vic and Isis are both, doing a sort of after-school special. Well, we all learned a lot here today.
It's very much kind of calming the biggest tempers in this half of the world right now.
For sure.
And the vibe of this scene is a little bit you shot a kid. Get over it, you know? But it is a clearly not, I mean, it's the world of DC Comics. It is clearly not useful for the character of Renee Montoya to be drowning in grief. And I think that is clearly the sentiment that they're trying to put forward in a comic book that's not written quite so breezily and isn't trying to juggle different plots simultaneously. One could imagine that this particular scene goes on a little bit further, but they are going to get to the point of addressing Renee Montoya's mental health crisis. They will get there, you know? So I can't blame them for just kind of being Renee, just get the fuck up out of bed.
Listen,
get out of bed, stop it.
This is a weekly series. We're already way behind schedule.
Yeah,
that's what this whole scene feels like. It's okay, so it's the mixed match cross between Rucka and Johns' plot points. It's okay, blah, 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 here's the medals. Oh, sorry, Renee's not here. Okay, boom, Pooling Man Wall thing. Okay, now we got to sort through this. Now here's Ralph Sidney.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
It does feel a little bit like a mid-season episode of a TV show where they've done too many, filler episodes and they've realized that they have to get the plot rolling.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Okay, so after the three people yelled at Renee Montoya and told her to stop being so sad about killing a child, the scene we move on to the next day of the week, day 3, where we meet up with Detective Chimp and Bearded Ralph Dibny in Marseille, France.
Oh, France.
I'm sorry, France. My mom is fluent in French, and she drilled this pronunciation into me against my will, more or less. I can't say French words like a normal person, and it's really annoying to me and to everyone around me. So I'm going to say Marseille, and
How
I'm
do you
sure
say croissant?
Croissant.
Okay.
There you go.
Ask and answer.
Macaron.
You've proven your bona fides.
Yeah. My mom has this funny mnemonic. Well, it's not even a mnemonic. She's like, well, when you say you have to imagine the Queen Victoria being given a plate full of shit. Ew.
Good to know.
I love her. She drives me crazy. I love my mom though. So what are Detective Chimp and Bearded Ralph Dibny talking about here? They've got the helmet of Dr. Fate, and they are essentially trying to uncover. Detective Chimp has come to him to try to uncover what the fuck happened to what's his name, Trench, and
Tim Trench,
and what's going on with the helmet of Fate. Everyone's character that everyone knows about Tim Trench that I definitely didn't learn about this issue and assumed wasn't from comic books previously.
Yeah. It's okay. No, everyone else forgot about him too. Literally, Mark Waid remembered this guy existed and no one else.
Gosh.
I legit thought he was a member of the Shadowpact when I read this.
Ralph's main question for Detective Chimp is, how the hell did you find me here? We get a really funny line about how the Croatoans figured out the ending of Lost. We could find one of our own guys.
They absolutely did not, though. You know? Because this is written under the presupposition that the presumption that Lost had an ending that the writers knew. And they didn't. They didn't know at this time. And they wouldn't know.
Counterpoint, they knew the ending of Lost the same way everyone literally guessed the ending of Lost in season 1. It's like, oh, it's purgatory. No, it's not.
Fair enough.
I thought the next bit that Detective Chimp adds is pretty funny, is how they found Ralph's alias.
Oh,
like,
I love that bit also.
Arthur Conan Doyle's uncle's
grandfather's neighbor. That's some real Adam West Batman shit, and I love it. It
really is great. It's like you wanted to be found. That cracks me up. See, this is the kind of hijinks you can have in your comic book if a chimp can be a detective, okay? This is...
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, he's a Holmes diehard. He knows this stuff.
James Gunn, if you're listening, Detective Chimp movie, please, I'm begging you. It would be very good.
There are a bunch of references here to Detective Chimp being a Republican. I just want to say that's not Mark Waid's idea.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah. That's specifically a thing that's in famous Zionist Bill Willingham's Shadowpact run, which is happening at the same time, where he decides that Detective Chimp is going to be his political mouthpiece for some reason.
A chimp would never be a Republican, though.
Yeah.
You have to you live in the jungle, my friend. You have to know what side your bread is buttered on.
I think the only context that a chimp would want to be a Republican is if they are eagerly looking forward to the downfall of man so that the apes can rise.
You know what? When you put it like that, that makes a perfect sense.
You know, actually, yeah. No, this is an accelerationist chimp.
Yeah. It's apes together strong. That's that's his political stance.
Dog, those movies are so good.
I know! They have no right to be that good!
My husband is a huge fan of the blank of the Planet of the Apes movies, and I saw the first one with what's his name? James Franco, and it's fine. It's not very good. Yeah. But then each successive movie after that is better than the last, and I know
it's insane!
Yeah, the Matt Reeves ones rule.
Yeah, God, they're so good.
They're on number 4 right now, and 4 is really good. Movie series don't do that.
I haven't seen the 4th one yet. I'm so excited.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh my God.
It's not as good as 3, but it's really, really good.
I mean, how many things can be as good as 3, to be fair?
Exactly. Yeah. It's not fair.
3 is a really good movie.
Yeah.
Listen, okay, if you must do anything other than read at 52, dear listeners, it's go watch the blank of the Planet of the Apes movies. They're just ridiculously great. They're really, really fun.
I literally just watched all 4 in 1 week. I had an amazing time. It really hangs together very well, and I'm excited about the direction it's taking now.
Oh, thank God. Okay, moving on to other chimp-related shenanigans.
This whole Shadowpact thing is why Ralph is getting involved here, so that ostensibly they can address one of the titles that this book promised to tie into. But as I said earlier, there's a big problem there, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet. We'll have to wait until after Booster Gold's funeral.
Booster Gold's funeral.
I know canonically this takes place in Cincinnati, but it looks like it should be taking place in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia didn't want him.
No, sorry. He's got sponsorship stickers on his casket, and they say things like, Soda Cola mourns your passing.
Yeah.
Farewell, Booster Gold, from your friends at Pep Cereal.
Yeah. He's got 6 pallbearers here. He's got the Blimp from the parody series Inferior 5 from the Silver Age. He's got Yellow Perry, who is like an 80s Superboy villain. He's got Mind Grabber Kid, who is kind of a joke Bronze Age Justice League character who Grant Morrison brought back for the Bulleteer. He's got Odd Man, who is literally a Steve Ditko character so obscure that his first appearance was canceled. So he doesn't even technically exist.
Was this his first appearance then?
No, they reprinted it at a different point in the back of the Detective Comics. But he was one of the victims of the DC implosion in the 70s. It was meant to be this takeoff for this new Ditko character, but never happened. We've got Beefeater, who's from Keith Giffen's JLA run, who looks like a British Royal Guard dude in a wrestler mask. And our sixth pallbearer is literally just Abraham Lincoln in a cape.
That's really funny. Oh, yeah. Honest Abe.
Yeah, that's it. That's literally his name. His canonical name, this character, is Honest Abe.
He cannot.
And this is his first appearance.
I'm going to be the one that champions Honest Abe as a new leader of the DC universe. Listen, the system of power in the DC universe is about to change. Honest Abe on top. Honest Abe,
just wait till I get to the Blackboard, Gita. I've got dirt on Honest Abe.
Listen, Lincoln is coming out of the Bardo and he is here to kick your fucking ass.
Yeah, new chairman of the Justice League, Abraham Lincoln, our 16th president. I'm ready for it.
Possibly the only good president. Jury's still out, but not looking good for all the rest of them.
We're doing it in Cincinnati because that was the only city that would take him. Which I recently did a watch through of Girls 5 Eva. Since it came to Netflix.
Yes. My father-in-law is a huge fan of Girls 5 Eva.
And there's this great bit where they write a whole song about Fort Worth because it's the biggest city that doesn't have a song about it.
That's so funny. At the end of, there's an end of a Nicki Minaj song I used to really, really love in college. She just names a whole bunch of places and you're like, oh, you are going to play this song on tour because at different places so other people can scream. But then when she got to my home state, Connecticut, she just doesn't name a state. She just says, Connecticut. She moves on.
so yeah, we've got Booster and Clark. We've got Skeets and Clark Kent covering the funeral. Basically, these pallbearers have shown up and literally nobody else because Booster has just recently been extremely canceled on public television by Ralph Dibny and the supervillain that he paid off to take a dive for him for publicity. So he did not die a very popular guy, despite saving Metropolis.
It's great. I love all these wacky characters. Half of them are there because I got hired online to do it, which is also great. And I want like either like a Keith Giffen or a like 80s Peter David series about all these guys.
Oh man, 80s era Peter David series about the group of hero freelancers who keep meeting off Craigslist would go so hard.
Well, David and Gita, you're in luck because Mark Russell's One Star Squadron, a comic that came out a couple years ago, is literally that premise. A bunch of obscure superheroes who take superheroing jobs through a hero share app called Heroes for You.
Great. That sounds super fun. Gig work is so funny, and it's fun to imagine, like, in the way that Booster Gold is fun, right? Booster Gold is fun because he's a loser, and he keeps Mr. Magooing his way into saving the world, but no one will ever know. It's fun to think about superheroes suffering the same indignities that the rest of us do, doing gig work. Like, I would love to read a series about looking for gigs off of Craigslist and then having to do them, but you can shoot laser beams out of your eyes.
Yeah. Their slogan is Superman level service at bizarro prices.
That's so funny. That's so good.
I'll have to hunt that down. Yeah.
Yeah. I dropped the cover image of the first issue in the chat. If that's not enough to sell you.
Oh, that's wonderful. They're in a cash tornado.
Yeah. Check that out. Mark Russell is delightful. I've interviewed him a couple times. He's great. Right. So we got this funeral and Skeets discovers one person walking down the street who bears an uncanny resemblance to his dead buddy. This guy, Daniel Carter. Could he bear some relation to Michael John Carter, the barely used real name of Booster Gold?
Well, his name is Daniel John Carter, so it seems like it. Yeah. He's wearing a JLA t-shirt, which I think is really cute. Has the worst haircut known to man.
It's awful. It truly is awful.
It's a haircut that's the hair you have when you've been between haircuts for a little bit too long, where it's like really long in the back, but reasonable in the front, but you're just kind of pushing it backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea that Booster's ancestors sang for Creed, but
like I feel like you would think that the phrase bad mullet is redundant, But even amongst mullets, this is a bad mullet.
This is a particularly bad mullet in that it's an unintentional mullet.
Bad.
Yeah, no, it's really not good. He does look like a guy from Ohio, though, so props to...
props to Eddie Barrows here for making him look like a real dirtbag.
Oh, man. I have many, many great friends from Ohio. I truly do went to college in Ohio. But a lot of people from Ohio look like this.
Skeets has plans for this guy because he can't let this weird space-time anomaly mystery they've been chasing go. So maybe Booster's great-great-grandpa, if that's indeed who this guy is, can help out. And we're going to have to leave that till next week because now, finally, we get to the long-promised Shadowpact in Giza, Egypt, where the Helmet of Fate was originally discovered back in the 1940s. By some white archaeologist who got all of the powers of Egyptian gods because that's how comics worked in the 1940s.
I love that just being Egyptian made you magic.
Yeah.
You know? I went to Italy and we visited a lot of like historical sites, and it's like the same continuity of belief as from the ancient Roman times. If it's from Egypt, might be magic. You know? Gotta watch out, could be magic.
Visiting Egypt makes you magic. Visiting Italy makes you delicious. That's how it works.
Absolutely true. I can't
100%.
Yeah. You will go to any restaurant in Italy. It'll be the best restaurant you've ever been to in your life. Like, that's just true. It was really wild. Had the best food ever, and I'm going to be thinking about it for the rest of my life. Sorry. I'm now one of those people that can't have pizza in America because it's not as good. That's a lie. I will always eat pizza.
I'm worried about what it'll do to me. We get a quick recap of what happened in Day of Vengeance. Dr. Fate died. The helmet got thrown away for some new person to take it, which it hasn't gotten yet. It certainly wasn't Tim Trench. The beginning of something called the 10th Age of Magic, which hasn't really been explored, started, which is a thing they're doing contemporarily in Shadowpact. And Ralph is meeting here with all of the members of the team in Egypt. He's meeting Ragman, he's meeting Nightmaster. Of course, Mark Waid knows that he knows Blue Devil because they met each other in 1984's Blue Devil #4. How could you not know that?
You'd have to be a real rube not to know that.
Yeah. But Nightshade and Enchantress and the rest of the team he's meeting here for the first time, except that's impossible because... And here's where I'm finally getting into it. Bill Willingham already addressed the time gap of 52 by removing the entire team from the mortal plane for that entire year, that they were in some kind of magical netherrealm. So they can't be here because Bill already wrote them out because he thought, oh, those guys are never going to get to it.
You know, he had a good instinct, I'll say.
Yeah.
Good instincts, however,
for all of Bill Willingham's faults, that was not one of them. I think that was the right call to mend your own cattle there.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can't count out touchdown Tom. You just can't.
Yeah, because like a lot of those titles like solve that pretty like sufficiently in that regard. Like the Blue Beetle title that launched in 2006. Well, then they just have like Jaime Reyes. Like he was like in space or something for that year, and he shot
was
back
in space
into Earth's orbit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. A lot of the smarter titles knew to stay out of this whole team's way. And that's part of the reason 52 works, because everyone knew to make room for this. But sometimes it really doesn't. And this is unfortunately one of those cases. So that kind of beginning of the issue teaser, when is the Shadowpact, is kind of their acknowledgement of, yeah, we know this doesn't make sense. Something magic.
Whoopsie.
Sure.
Whoopsie doodle.
A wizard did it.
Oh, it's a time when you get to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love how it is like, oh yeah, okay, so went through all this editorial trouble to get the Shadowpact here, and they're gonna do nothing.
They stand in a tableau. That's what they do. Literally,
all they're here to do is facilitate a scene that Ralph really could have done on his own, as long as somebody brought him the helmet. And that's what Detective Chimp is doing here. And we get this extremely trippy scene where we're getting some hints as to what the 10th Age of Magic is. And in the liner notes for this issue, Mark Waid wrote that this is a simulation of every conversation he has with Grant Morrison, where Grant just goes on a tangent about how reality works. And he's like, okay.
Well, fair enough. That's fair enough. So I do recognize a couple. There is some spread of tarot cards here, and I do recognize some of them. But they are all kind of just sketchy, and some of the faces aren't fully visible. But one that is visible, we have Death, which Death symbolizes change in the tarot. I know this from being really obsessed with Escaflowne when I was a teenager. The anime. You haven't seen this anime, Escaflowne fucking whips.
I always thought it was Escaflown, but obviously it can't be that.
Escaflowne. See, I know it's Escaflowne because the eye catch for the episodes, someone always whispers Escaflowne. And so,
Full Metal Alchemist.
Exactly. Exactly. You know a show is good when the eye catch says the name of the show.
Doesn't miss.
Absolutely.
Mushishi does it. I love Mushishi.
God. So they have the Hanged Man reversed, which means delays, resistance, stalling, and indecision, which I also is absolutely a description of what this comic book is.
Week to week, absolutely, yeah. We see some prominent magic figures here. We got Etrigan hanging around. We got Madame Xanadu, who's always good for a tarot spread. We got Zatanna. We've got the new Spectre. Just people to illustrate that some weird magic shit's going on. I don't know who that guy in the lower left is.
Is that the Amethyst Princess? Is in the with the she's leaping out of the card? Is that?
Yeah,
Amethyst?
it's Amethyst.
Oh, okay, cool.
Amethyst is fun.
Dan Mishkin's own Amethyst Princess of Gemworld. One of DC's closest characters to an isekai protagonist.
Speaking of, have you seen the DC Universe isekai that's on...
Suicide Squad isekai?
Suicide Squad isekai. You're making a real face right there. Oh my god.
I am feral about it.
Oh my god.
I am obsessed with this thing.
I just... You can't convince me an isekai is good.
I want to tear it apart with my teeth.
You've been kind of feral.
Like, you know, I've always like I'll see images of him and I'll be like, okay, I kind of want to watch it, but I don't know.
Oh, what? The Charlton guy wants to watch the show with Peacemaker in it? I can't believe it. No, you got to see this show. It's insane.
Okay, I'll give it a look.
It's absolutely out of its mind bananas.
As soon as I'm healthy enough to smoke weed again, I'm going to watch it. It doesn't surprise me that the anime design of Harley Quinn is so adorable. She's basically an anime character already. She's so cute, though. Every time I see GIFs of her on Twitter, the Suicide Squad isekai Harley Quinn, I just love it. She's so cute. She looks like a VTuber.
Like, just watch the ending song where Amanda Waller is bussing it down. It's incredible.
Oh my god, yes!
You're gonna lose your entire fucking mind.
Amanda Waller definitely loves the song "Not Like Us," not knowing that she's the they.
She's the they.
Yeah, it's like Kendrick is talking about you, Amanda.
Oh yeah, you got to watch it. I'm gonna link it to you right after this because it's gonna change your life. I'm absolutely feral about this show. Tim Trench gets the helmet, puts it on. He's overwhelmed by it, but he's like, maybe it'll go better for you, Ralph Dibny. You want to take a ride with me? And shows him an image of Sue, maybe to tempt him, maybe to warn him about what's at stake. Another thing in Mark Waid's notes here is from this issue on, if you're paying attention, Ralph is wearing a wicker wedding ring in every scene that he made from that wicker wedding ring.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting. Gosh. Shadowpact truly does not do anything. No. They watch Ralph walk off with this helmet. They don't even move from their tableau, which is very funny.
They're literally just there to stand together in a group. Like, have
you seen that episode of Stella with Michael Ian Black, Michael Showalter, and David Wayne, where the doorbell rings and they just they run into a tableau and they go, "Who is it?" And it's like, "It's me. Can you open the door?" And they're like, "No, we're in a tableau."
Like, do you remember the cartoon Kids Next Door with those villains who only stood in a group and that was the only way you ever saw them?
Oh yeah, those delightful children. Yeah,
that's literally what Shadowpact is doing here.
And they have like a really good question also, which is, why did he think that helmet was talking to him? I feel like they have a lot of time where they could have asked some more questions to him, you know?
Yeah, they were like Willy Wonka, like, oh wait, don't go.
They're like, if we have any more lines in this scene, we're going to have to get WGA certified, and that's a whole thing we don't want to go through.
we're just special, we're extras with speaker lines now. We're non-union and we don't want to have to deal with that. So
right.
Yeah.
That's what's going on here, which means we now get to the best part of the issue, the 2-page bio backup.
It's really good. It's genuinely so good. Guess what character it's about, guys?
It's the Q, man. It's our freaky little guy.
It's our guy, and it's a good summary of him too.
Yeah, I spent years handing out these 2 pages like chick tracts to anyone who was like, what's the deal with the question? Because it's such a great, succinct summary of his whole deal without getting into the particulars, letting you kind of discover the specifics for yourself. To talk talent for a second, the artist here is Joe Bennett, the main, very problematic artist of 52, which I guess is appropriate considering this is one of the question's major storylines, the same way we got J.G. Jones, the cover artist, to do Black Adam. Like, why not highlight 52 as one of the question's essential stories? It is. So, yeah, I guess that's a good pick, even though I guess I would have preferred to see, say, a Dennis Cowan on this.
Cowan does come back to the character pretty regularly, so.
Yeah. He came back for the Deaths of Vic Sage. He was still around in 2006.
Yeah, no, and he did that. He came back for that Black Lantern question issue where.
That's true.
Where
yes,
Zombie Vic comes back. Yeah.
Yeah, the one co-written by Denny and
Greg Rucka.
Yeah, one of the highlights of Blackest Night. Honestly, what a great issue.
Yeah, no, it was great, and like you don't even need to read the rest of any of it to really understand what it's about. Too, so it's just nice.
Oh man, I love it when that happens in a comic book, like big special where it's like, oh, this one's just good to read. Have fun.
Yeah, there should be more of that. Of course, because Mark Waid is Mark Waid, he can't help himself but create new, interesting lore in this. Like, this is the first time we see the origin of Pseudoderm, where Mark Waid connects it to Jingold, which is the chemical that gives Elongated Man his elasticity. And he also name drops Bart Magan, who is a villain who appeared in one issue of Detective Comics back in 1963, Detective Comics number 13, a villain named Dr. No Face, who is kind of like literally predated the question's entire deal by 4 years, except he was a villain. So Mark would be like, wouldn't it be cool to connect these guys? So that's what he's doing in just like one line in this. And that's the reason I love this dude.
Yeah, and it doesn't distract too much either. Like, you don't need to know those things to, like,
But if you want to dig into it, it's there for you, which is appropriate for a question story.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
They have the essential storylines here, and it names comics that you have mentioned a lot of times, specifically including Batman Huntress Cry for Blood. But are there other essential question storylines that you would add to this, either of you as our question experts?
Good question.
I would say, like, specifically for the question in, like, the 52 context especially, those recommendations really work. I guess, like, if you're going to include Mysterious Suspense, I would also include those original Ditko issues of Blue Beetle, because, like, that's where you get more
those
of
5 issues,
Ditko's questions. And there's some other interesting ones as well. Like, Alex, we both like, or at least have an interesting appreciation for that strange Rick beat Tommy Lee Edwards 2005 series. Right, like
you've misremembered me. I hate that book.
Okay, sorry.
I do not like Urban Shaman Question. That is like not me. Like, all due respect to Rick Veitch, it just didn't do anything.
Okay, can you explain Urban Shaman Question? What do those 3 words mean in sequence? Right.
Okay, David, you want to take this one?
Okay,
but I want to hear you explain it since you like it.
I'll admit it's not like the strongest take on the question. I much prefer Denny O'Neill's reinvention quite a bit more. But the whole take on it, I guess like Tommy Lee Edwards' art is the bigger strength of it. But
the art's great.
Yeah, the premise is that Vic Sage, aka the question, has the powers of that one guy from The Authority, where he can talk to cities. Jack Hawksmoor, like he can talk to cities, and the cities like point things out to him, and they illuminate a map of sorts of places, and he can like find things out. And like he goes to Metropolis, and he finds out that people are doing drug deals in bathrooms because that's the one place Superman won't look.
That's funny. I like that.
That is really funny. Also because the bathroom is an incredibly common place to do a drug deal.
Yeah, right.
That's like the number one place you would go to do a drug deal. Come on, guys.
I mean, like, there's some strengths and weaknesses to the series. I would say, like, anyone who likes the question, I would say read it once to see what you think. Yeah. But yeah.
The other thing I like about that series is that it establishes Vic is a simp for Lois Lane. That just makes sense.
That just makes sense. Absolutely.
It does.
He's a former investigative journalist. Here's a fun activity I've been doing on my own time, trying to figure out which DC comic book characters would listen to and enjoy Brat by Charlie XCX. Lois Lane, absolutely. She is having a Brat summer right now. Clark doesn't get it, but he's happy for her. Yeah.
I'm going to say Black Alice would get it. Crush, Lobo's daughter, would get it.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Lobo's daughter is out there. She's put it on her bike. Like bumping that. That's what it just shows up.
Stephanie Brown absolutely gets it.
Yeah. And Tim, I think Tim Drake actually probably gets it too.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim would get it.
it. Newly bisexual Tim Drake definitely is bumping that, I would say.
Okay, yeah. Maybe his boyfriend turned him on to it. I could see that.
This is the most awkward person at a Charlie XCX show is Tim
Drake. Boy. Did you have a favorite part of this issue?
My favorite part was probably the Black Adam, Isis, Vic Renee sort of like what we're playing catch up really quick. Because like even though it's kind of like, kind of fast paced and kind of like maybe they didn't want to hit all the beats they wanted to, it still kind of works in a way, in my opinion. Yeah. I just like the comedy of it, / like it includes some like actually pretty heavy drama in it too, with like Renee coming like trying to still deal with everything. And it is rushed, but I still like really enjoy how it was done.
Right. And it's such an essential Renee Montoya moment where she's just like unflinchingly looking at the most powerful man in the universe at the lowest point of her life. Yeah. Because she just is beyond feeling any kind of fear.
Yeah. It's the whole film noir of it all for her. Yeah. She carries it into every scene by being an alcoholic, essentially, Yeah.
You just asked me about the essential question reading. When people ask me that, what I tell them is read 52, then read the Denny O'Neil question series, then Cry for Blood, then Gotham Central, and then read 52 again. And that'll just kind of make it come all together. And this really demonstrates how important Gotham Central is to that whole saga, where you see both of those stories kind of converge here in the same way that kind of like Japanese novels structurally do, by introducing a character A and then a character B and having them come together for the third act. That's really what we're seeing here. It is a great scene. Gita, what's your favorite?
It's Detective Chimp, my friends. It's every time he shows up and says anything, I'm just like, every time Detective Chimp isn't on screen, people should be asking, where's Detective Chimp?
Where's Detective Chimp?
That's how I feel. I desperately, after reading this, I immediately thought to myself, why doesn't Detective Chimp show up more often? He just makes everything delightful. Like, even these incredibly sad moments, right? Like the death of one of my favorite characters in their funeral, Booster Gold, having Detective Chimp sandwiched in between all these, I'm just having a blast. Right. Even though he's a Republican,
We've dropped that angle post Shadowpact. I don't think anyone's come back to it, but yeah, he's very much, I guess, a Bush era Republican is what we're gonna say here. If it's 2006,
acceleration is chimp. That's what I feel. That has to be it.
It's that old Patton Oswalt joke that Bush doesn't want to be president. He wants to be the last president.
I do believe that about somebody else, but we don't have enough time for that.
It's a joke you can update every election cycle. That's what makes him a great comic.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm cheating every time I say this, but my favorite part is the backup. I love that question bio. It's just such great economical storytelling, how it just boils down literally everything you need to know into 2 pages. People love to extol the virtues of the first 2 pages of Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, where it kind of condenses everything you need to know about Superman into like 6 words. And this isn't quite as terse, but I feel like the 2-page backup that Mark Waid keeps doing throughout 52 is a little bit of a miracle. And to see someone else try to do it, but not as good, you can follow this same feature into Countdown and Blackest Night when other writers try to take it over. And it's not the same. It's good, but it reads like a Wikipedia article as opposed to telling a story. And there's a real art to that I've come to really appreciate.
I agree. Like, especially with that last part where a lot of these summary, like 2 pages or 2 or 3 pages or whatnot, like do feel a little too summaritive, I should say. And they don't really like hook you. Actually, to speak more on Mark Waid, I like, to prep myself for rereading 52. For the first time I read the 52 Companion, and that's a really well put together thing because I was prepared for this to be like, I was prepared for this to be like, here's everything that's gone on within the last 5 years of this, like, admittedly pretty confusing era in DC Comics. But it's not that. It's actually like Mark Waid going like, oh yeah, here's this character and here's an essential storyline with essential artists and writers that made this character really good and popular. And here's something that pertains to what's going on in 52 currently. And just like all the inclusions like make so much sense and it's great. And I recommend.
The 52 Companion is such an underrated book for the way it prepares you for the vibe of 52 as opposed to merely playing catch up. Like the way it's got mysterious suspense in there. It didn't have to do that, but it does it. It's really cool.
Yeah. Or like that novelette Adam Strange story. Like that was great. Yeah.
That's got more Adam Strange in it than 52 does.
Waka waka.
Gita, do you want to put anything on the Blackboard this week?
I did want to put something on the Blackboard, and I know the real history of Roanoke and Croatoan, but I want to know the DC Universe history of Roanoke and Croatoan. The idea of a lost American colony was something that captured my imagination when I heard about it in like the 4th grade. It's always disappointing to learn that the answer to the question of what happened to all these people was they were bad at farming and died. But clearly something different happened in the DC Universe in that the people of Croatoan, of Roanoke, are still alive, and one of them is Clarion and the Witch Boy.
Well, it's funny you should bring that up because Grant Morrison actually does address that in 7 Soldiers of Victory. If you go back and reread Clarion, you'll see that it's not spelled out, but in that series, it kind of has Morrison's own explanation for how the entire colony kind of fell out of reality as sort of a lover's quarrel between Melmoth and the Witch Queen.
Ooh, okay. I do have to reread that then. I've read that a couple of times, but The Shining Knight and the Zatanna storylines are my 2 favorites in there.
The Shining Knight one, as someone who's notorious Morrison skeptic, The Shining Knight one slaps. I gotta say,
so
I can't fault it. It's so ahead of its time.
Absolutely.
It's been a minute since I've read 7 Soldiers, and I really got to reread it. In fact, I really want to collect it. But my favorite, like when I read it, I was absolutely down with the Frankenstein story and just shows up to fuck everything up.
Yeah, when Frankenstein goes to Mars, and like in one page, like it's the page right before you turn to the next 2 pages, and it's the last panel is Frankenstein. How are you going to get to Mars? And you turn the page and it's just a splash of him on Mars and he goes, all in a day's work for Frankenstein.
That is so great. I love the train bit where like he's on the train and the train crashes and it's like, oh yeah, 200 years later. Do not change angle, do not change frame. It's just a bunch of rocks on top of that train now.
It does rock. It's pure comic book, the Frankenstein one. You can tell that Morrison's having like a lot of fun because they're like, it's Frankenstein. There's no rules here.
Yeah, I gotta give it up. I have no choice but to give it up. Are there any connections you would like to draw to the greater DC universe on our Blackboard here?
I would say, like, honestly, like, I'm kind of, now that Mark Waid, like Mark Waid and Morrison too, are they kind of like reintroducing these characters with like untapped potential, but like now that he had the Helm of Fate on and he melted, I'm kind of wondering what Tim Trench has been up to in between that bad Wonder Woman series and now.
Funny you should say that because he got involved in like Hero Hotline for a second, which was kind of like the spiritual sequel to Dial H for Hero, which I guess would have been the dial-up era equivalent of a superhero app where you just like called these heroes for hire for help, and he was part of that. It didn't really go anywhere.
Interesting.
But that's what they used him for.
Interesting.
Thank you for answering our questions, as always.
That's what I'm here for. In fact, I'm here to answer a question that nobody knew the answer to until literally this episode. Because today on the Blackboard, I want to put up Abraham Lincoln in the blue cape, Honest Abe, who, when this issue came out, people had no idea what this guy's deal was supposed to be. And Stephen Wacker, the editor, would just say, that's Honest Abe. He's a new hero in the DC universe. He's Abraham Lincoln. And in the liner notes for the 52 Omnibus, Mark wrote about how Honest Abe was based on a pitch he wrote for Stephen Wacker on a dare in the 90s, who Wacker brought into this scene just kind of like as an in-joke between them. So because he's been on the show before, I was able to write to Mark and ask him, hey, do you still have that pitch where you made Abraham Lincoln a superhero? And he sent me the whole thing.
Oh my God.
I have the Abraham Lincoln script.
I'm so excited. This fucking rules.
Absolutely. This was originally a pitch for JLA number 32. The title, Mission Emancipate the JLA. And in this story, Mark introduces a new villain named, it's like Liquis the Conqueror or something. But the point is, this liquid alien being animates all of these things that it touches. And it contaminates the Central City Museum, which brings their wax statues of the Hall of Presidents to life. And all of the presidents become these just like walking around characters. And Abraham Lincoln takes a look at the lay of the land as it is in the 20th century DC universe and decides, well, I gotta be a superhero. And he joins the Justice League in defeating this new alien conqueror. And he just apparently is around ever since then as, I guess, the Super-Hero Protector of Cincinnati. Just Abraham Lincoln in a blue cape. Mind you, this was 8 years before Night at the Museum. Bit of a trailblazer there. And that's the story of Honest Abe. He's a wax figure of Abraham Lincoln brought to life.
And we love him.
Yeah. And that's canon.
Absolutely amazing.
I think that's about it, except for our mailbag. It's time for asking the questions, which is our point where we answer your questions from the breadth and depth of the DC universe and beyond, which you can partake in simply by sending your mail to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Our first question comes from Andrew They Them. He says, howdy, Weekly Warriors. Love the show. 52 has been my favorite DC story since the trades originally came out, and I would spend my lunch breaks reading them at the Barnes & Noble. To have it covered by two of my favorite people on the internet is very exciting. Aw. I hate the Flash character Tempest Fugina. Not because of anything particular the character has done, but solely because their name is the worst kind of dog Latin. They were going for the Time Flyer, but Fugit doesn't mean fly like a bird. It means fly like Gandalf telling you to run from the Balrog. So what you get is the Time Runawayer.
That's really funny.
Are there any comic characters that you particularly dislike for reasons unrelated to their fictional depiction?
I mean, probably, but I'm going to need a second if anyone has an immediate answer. I know that I've disliked characters for petty reasons before, and I will in the future.
I got a big one for me. This one has always stuck in my craw since I was a little bitty comic fan. The Anti-Monitor. Because the Monitor is such a non-character that the fact that the biggest bad in the history of the DC universe is the anti-that guy, it just feels wrong. It's like the entire scope of reality will be destroyed by Anti-Kevin, but like you've never met Kevin before.
You're like, who's Kevin?
It's such an artifact of the fact there was this character called the Monitor who was peeking around the corners of DC from 1982 to 1985 that Marv Wolfman and George Perez had clearly not figured out what entirely to do with yet. But the actual revelation of the Anti-Monitor has so overshadowed the Monitor over time that like we're stuck with this really goofy ass supervillain name for the person who literally rewrote the entire concept of comics continuity. And I wish he wasn't. And Jeff Johns tried to fix that in Dark Side War back in 2015, where he was like, actually, Anti-Monitor's real name is Mobius. But everyone's like, but like by then it's way 30
too late.
Years too late.
It's
man.
way too late, guy.
So that's the one that really bugs me. I don't like the Anti-Monitor.
It's pretty funny. Anti-Kevin. I was going to say it's like being someone who's like, and I've got a real bone to pick with your grandma.
Seriously.
David, do you have one? A character you hate for petty reasons?
I guess I'll go with Vandal Savage.
Oh, really?
Just never liked his vibe. Just like whenever he shows up in a story, I'm like, okay, whatever, man. I'm cool. You're an immortal.
Did anyone ever ask if Vandal Savage had bad vibes or was simply unpleasant to be around? Vandal Savage is definitely a character where it's like, if you show up in a comic, it's either going to be the best comic ever or it's going to be so fucking annoying. You know,
you know what? That's true.
I feel the same way about Etrigan because of the rhyming motif where if certain writers and they get Etrigan and I'm like, sick. Fuck yes. They're going to do the whole thing in rhyming couplets and it's going to be dope. And then some writers should do Etrigan and it's just like, I know that you don't have the capability of sustaining this. You're going to rhyme there with there and it's going to bother me so much. So I think, probably Etrigan is probably mine, where it's like, you just don't try it if you can't hack it. Just don't. It's going to be embarrassing for you.
I want to shout out, you're a fan of the show, Talkin' Lady Shiva's years-long grudge against Tim Drake. Because every time Tim Drake shows up to fight Lady Shiva, he cheats his way into a win in the shittiest way possible. Like he poisons her chocolate, or he like puts a whistle in his stick to distract her.
That's so funny.
It's just some real bullshit.
That's Tim Drake would do that though.
Yeah. But like, if you're a Lady Shiva fan, obviously you're going to hate that shit. And I absolutely get it. It's like, I want that little twink obliterated. So yeah, props to the Tim Drake haters out there. I get it. Oh, we got one more question from Sebastian G, who asks, who would win in a fight, Tom Bombadil or the Green Lantern Corps?
Tom Bombadil, obviously.
Hey ho, Mario. Yeah.
Listen, Tom Bombadil defeated me personally in reading Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like, I believe he can do anything.
I think he's magic, and magic pretty much always trumps the Green Lantern Corps. That's why the Guardians are all scared to death of Alan Scott. So I think Tom Bombadil has this.
Yeah, actually, speaking of petty, I've never really vibed with. I like them under certain circumstances in writing, but like if it's like all the Green Lantern Corps, I'm like, I can't really do it. I don't know. Like,
I get it.
It's rooting for the cops, right? That's what it feels like.
Rooting for space cops a little bit. Like, I mean, I've heard Jeff Johns' run is really good and stuff. I just never got around to it.
It is, but it is rooting for the cops. It is giving propaganda, but it is really good. You know, you show me one freaky guy and I'm like, sick. You show me two freaky guys and I'm like, the more the merrier. You show me an entire army of freaky guys and then no one's freaky anymore.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
There is the Star Wars cantina factor, though. If you see a bunch of really interesting, freaky guys at once and you're like, oh, what's this guy's deal? But I think the reason it doesn't work for the Green Lantern Corps is that you know the answer to this guy's deal. It's, oh, they got a space ring and they're a cop now.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're all, it's like if you're walking into the cantina, it's all cops.
Yeah.
Like, oh, great, we're in a cop bar. Shit, we love that.
Walking into an alien cop bar.
So annoying.
Oh, that's so funny because that's literally what Guy Gardner's Warriors Bar on Oa is. It's a Green Lantern cop bar where everybody's an alien cop. Oh my God.
It just, for me, I took it to the Star Wars direction where it's like, well, this explains the Bill Burr's character's Boston accent. There is a space Boston, and that's where the space cop bar is.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us this episode. Is there anywhere that people can check out your insane ramblings about pulp heroes who haven't been relevant in 80 years because you've run out of question things to talk about?
They certainly can find me in certain places like that and rambling about things like that. I am on Blue Sky and Twitter or whatever it's called now as Questionposting. I'm also on Instagram as Questionposting, but I got to get around to posting more on there. But I'm mainly found on the Kurt's Facebook as Charlton Posting. And yeah, if you want to find me anywhere in any of those places, I'll be glad to rant about nonsensical stuff to you.
Yeah, ask him about Tarzan. Ask him about Doc Savage.
Absolutely.
Ask him about the Green Hornet, and that's going to be your entire day.
I do have questions about Tarzan, but I'm not going to get started now. We'll talk later.
We'll talk later, absolutely. I gotta show Gita this Suicide Squad isekai ending. But absolutely. I'll be entertaining any further questions from the two of you, specifically one more.
Actually, I've got a question for you, Alex. Are you all settled for this right now?
I am settled for the question.
Are you ready?
Oh! I thought I was settled, but I'm not.
I've unsettled you.
I've been unsettled.
One might say you've been dismantled. But
bow.
52 Pickup is an Aftermath production created by Gita Jackson and Alex Jaffe and edited by Esper Quim with original music by John Ahrens. The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the show's personalities and do not reflect those of DC Entertainment or Warner Brothers. Please rate and review our show wherever you can and send your questions and comments to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Never stop reading comics.